couple of days ago you've been at the occupation line, and actually everybody knows that Russia does not care about fulfillment of the 2008 agreement so far. The same situation is with Ukraine, we know. What could be and should be done, what else should be done to change the status quo, to make Russia to respect these agreements? And also you mentioned that there needs to be more international attention towards these issues. What more could be done? That is my question.
Right. Well, thank you for the question. And first off, I think, just as you said, calling more international attention to the situation on the ground itself is critically important. These are people's lives that are disrupted. There are family members that are separated. There are mixed families that can't visit relatives. There are cemeteries that people can't visit. There are villages that are disrupted. Agriculture, irrigation lines, truck transport, trade. It has really created a tremendous hardship on the population, both in the occupied territories and in the areas that are not occupied but are near there, because it disrupts those lives as well. So it's a tragedy for the people there. Second, as you said, there was a ceasefire agreement in 2008 negotiated by the European Union, by President Sarkozy, who was the president of the EU at the time. Russia has never fulfilled the terms of that ceasefire agreement. Most important one of which is to withdraw its forces to where they were before the fighting started, which Russia never did. Before the fighting started, you had forces provided by Russia, but forces there as UN peacekeepers. Those are no longer UN peacekeepers in the occupied territories. These are direct Russian forces, FSB and so forth, that are now occupying this area. That is the most basic and obvious violation of the ceasefire agreement. The other is that Russia keeps changing the border. It keeps moving it through this borderization process, putting in a hard border, connecting it through fencing, taking additional territory. That's also something that should be of great concern. The Geneva meetings that do take place are not proving to be effective in getting everyone in the international community and Russia focused on solving this problem and getting these ceasefire agreements finally implemented. And I do think there should be an effort to raise the level of attention and the focus on this to see if we can stabilize the border.
Should the Geneva format be changed or transformed somehow?
Well, I'd like to see it upgraded at least. I think it's meeting at a very low level and is not taking on serious issues. And as a result, I don't think Russia is being held to account in any way. And so I think finding a way to increase the attention that is there by raising the level would be at least a first step. And then whether a different format is needed, that's a good question. As you noted, you made the comparison with Ukraine. The French and Germans have created a Normandy format for pressing for resolution of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. There is no such format in the case of Georgia, and maybe the European Union, which after all negotiated the ceasefire to begin with, would be the logical player to pull something together on that.
Okay. Actually, could we talk about the similarities and differences between the challenges for Ukraine and for Georgia combating Russian aggression? Are there similarities?
There's one very important similarity, which is that in both cases, Russia denies that it is running the operations, that it is controlling the occupation, that it is in charge of the local authorities, the so-called People's Republics in Ukraine or the Abkhaz and South Ossetian authorities in Georgia. But Russia, in fact, is in direct control. And then in these international peace formats, Russia wants Georgia or Ukraine to negotiate with the puppet entities that it controls and not with Russia directly. And that's where the international community's role is so important, because we all know that this is Russia directly doing this, and we know that there needs to be a direct negotiation with Russia, and we should be supportive of that. And if there are ways that we can engage to help facilitate that, to bring about a genuine resolution, that's what we should do.
Could we talk about uniting Western efforts concerning Ukraine and Georgia issues? I mean sanctions actually, because there are Western sanctions after Ukraine territory was annexed. There was no such measure introduced after 2008 August war in Georgia. Can it be somehow changed, corrected? I don't know.
Well, as a theoretical question, can it be changed? Of course it can be changed. Anything can be changed. As a practical matter, we have enormous sanctions in place against Russia as it is. Because of the annexation of Crimea, because of the Donbass, because of the Skripal attacks and so on. And there is already therefore a strong regime, and we are seeking changes in Russian behavior. Because what happened in Georgia took so long ago and those decisions were not made at the time, I think it is difficult to generate the momentum for new sanctions on those things now. It's a fair question. I think a starting point before you get to talking about sanctions would be to actually get more international attention on what the issues are themselves.
And is it measurable, the effect of those sanctions against Russia?
It's not easily measurable. I think that's a fair challenge or a fair question. But I do believe you see the impact of sanctions in terms of impact on the Russian overall economy and on the pressure that some of the leadership feels. And I think that, combined with the fact that they're not gaining from this, I think that it would be worth paying a price, if you're Russia, if you felt like it was doing something for you. But the reality is that it's actually hurting Russia, that this occupation in Ukraine or this occupation in Georgia has hurt Russia, it's diminished its reputation, it has hurt economically. It has caused Georgia to be more unified and more determined to be a pro-Western, pro-NATO, pro-EU country. The same thing has now happened in Ukraine as well, that the effect of having had to defend themselves against Russian mortar and sniper and artillery fire has helped congeal Ukrainian society, that they don't want to be part of that, they want to be part of a West, they want to be a democracy, and they want to be secure. So I think that Russia has actually done the opposite of what its own objectives would be, which is to have closer relations and some influence in Ukraine and Georgia. It's actually lost the hearts and minds of both countries.
A couple of days ago, just a few days ago, there was a prison exchange between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And you expressed some kind of hope.
I think it's a very good step. It's a very good step. Very encouraged to see the prisoner exchange. I hope that leads to additional prisoner exchanges, because there are more prisoners being held, also in the context of the Donbass. And I hope that it leads to some further momentum, because you need more momentum for a ceasefire. Violations of the ceasefire have increased again after a period of downtime, and you need momentum toward implementation of Minsk. And thus far, Russia has not fulfilled major portions of the Minsk agreements, the withdrawal of its forces, the disbanding of illegal armed groups, and so forth. So we hope that this leads to some additional momentum.